For over 7 decades, India and Pakistan have stood on opposite ends of nearly every major political, military, and economic question in South Asia. Partition in 1947 carved not only a border between the two countries, it carved deep emotional and historical wounds into the psyche of the subcontinent. 3 wars, countless skirmishes, and endless rounds of diplomatic freeze have turned South Asia into a region haunted by what might have been. But what if, just what if, instead of enemies, India and Pakistan chose to be allies? This is not a naive dream. In a world redefined by shifting alliances, energy transitions, rising China, and economic interdependence, the cost of enmity is growing and the value of partnership has never been higher. Imagine this: over 1.7 billion people suddenly freed from decades of hostility, a unified trade corridor from Mumbai to Karachi, cross-border tech ventures between Bengaluru and Lahore, tourism from Islamabad to Jaipur, shared hydropower projects in Kashmir, joint infrastructure linking Gwadar with India's inland markets. The impact would be nothing short of a geopolitical shockwave. India is already emerging as a global tech and economic powerhouse. Pakistan, despite internal turmoil, sits on strategic geography, untapped youth potential, and a growing interest in connectivity. As allies, or even as neutral friends, they could transform the region. But let's not rush ahead. To understand the magnitude of this hypothetical alliance, we must first understand what stands in the way and what could change it. Shockwave 1. South Asia becomes a global economic powerhouse. Today, India is the 5th largest economy in the world, racing toward the 3rd. Pakistan, meanwhile, struggles under debt, political instability, and economic stagnation. But this imbalance hides a deeper truth. If cooperation replaces conflict, the two could complement each other in extraordinary ways. India brings scale, a billion-strong digital economy, tech talent, capital markets, and infrastructure. Pakistan brings access to the Arabian Sea via Gwadar, a youthful population and a pivotal location at the crossroads of Central Asia, the Middle East, and China. Imagine this alliance forming a South Asian economic bloc, not unlike the EU or ASEAN. Trade barriers fall. Rail lines connect Lahore to Delhi, Karachi to Mumbai. Indian software exports meet Pakistani textile goods. The result, a $4.5 trillion South Asian economic corridor, rivaling even the EU. Global investors would rush in. For tech giants like Apple or Tesla, an allied Indo-Pakistan region would offer cheap labor, manufacturing capacity, a massive consumer base, and 2 deep-water ports. It's the dream of every supply chain strategist. And most importantly, the billions currently wasted on military posturing could finally be redirected toward education, energy, innovation, and climate adaptation. Shockwave 2. China's grand strategy gets disrupted. China has long benefited from Indo-Pak rivalry. Its Belt and Road Initiative (BRI), particularly the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor (CP), it thrives on Pakistan's isolation from India. It anchors China's influence in South Asia through Gwadar and the Karakoram Highway. But if Pakistan opens its markets to India, or worse for Beijing, partners with India on logistics, China's leverage crumbles. Gwadar could serve both Indian and Pakistani trade. India could gain access to Central Asian energy via Pakistan's land routes. Even Afghanistan, long closed off, could see joint Indo-Pak stabilization and reconstruction initiatives. The result, a shift away from Chinese dominance in regional trade and connectivity. The digital yuan, once seen as Pakistan's future currency and trade, would face competition from India's UPI and the RuPay card. Chinese digital monopolies might find themselves locked out of a now integrated South Asian tech ecosystem. Shockwave 3. Military de-escalation frees billions and redefines global alliances. India and Pakistan spend a combined $100 billion annually on defense, much of it focused on countering each other. Nuclear deterrence, border defenses, constant alertness, it all comes at a massive social cost. Now imagine an alliance or detente. Both nations could cut defense budgets by 20–30%, unlocking tens of billions for schools, climate resilience, water security, and digitization. But beyond economics, military peace between India and Pakistan would reconfigure alliances globally. The U.S., currently walking a tightrope between New Delhi and Islamabad, would find a stable regional anchor in a friendly Indo-Pak bloc. Russia, already drifting closer to India, might pivot more firmly toward South Asia. Even Iran could benefit, using Pakistani and Indian routes for trade, while bypassing sanctions choke points. And let's not forget the nuclear question. A detente would massively ease global fears of accidental escalation or nuclear exchange. Shockwave 4. Kashmir. From flashpoint to free economic zone. Perhaps the most emotionally and politically charged issue between India and Pakistan is Kashmir. For decades it has fueled war, insurgency and bloodshed on both sides. Any vision of Indo-Pak alliance must confront this issue head-on. Now suppose a different model emerges, not enforced borders or international mediation, but shared economic zones, joint governance on environmental issues, and free movement for Kashmir as a cross-lock line of control. Rather than force a political solution immediately, a gradual economic normalization could cool tensions. Markets in Srinagar and Muzaffarabad reopen. Hydropower projects are co-managed. Tourism flourishes. Families divided for generations reconnect. Of course, such cooperation would require enormous political courage and constitutional creativity from both sides. But if it happened, it could reframe Kashmir not as a war zone, but as a bridge. Shockwave 5. The rise of a new Global South leader today. The Global South looks for leaders, not just rhetorically, but structurally. India is already emerging as a voice of the Global South, but its regional credibility is limited by its unresolved conflict with Pakistan. Now imagine the optics. India and Pakistan standing side by side at the UN General Assembly, pushing for Global South debt relief, fair climate finance, or equitable vaccine distribution. Such an alliance would amplify both nations' voices and silence critics who dismiss the Global South as a divided bloc. Together, India and Pakistan could lead initiatives in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. Pakistan gains global legitimacy. India gains moral authority. The Global South gains hope. These are not fantasies. They are real, tangible opportunities. If hostility is replaced by bold statesmanship. Imagine this: freight trains loaded with Indian pharmaceuticals and Pakistani textiles crossing seamlessly at the Wagah border, bound for Central Asia. Roads once patrolled for insurgents now humming with trade convoys. This is not just a fantasy, it's the dormant potential of the Indo-Pak economic corridor. If India and Pakistan became allies, the entire geography of commerce would change. CPEC would no longer end at Gwadar, it could extend into India. Delhi would no longer be excluded from Belt and Road Initiative routes. In return, India's planned connectivity to Central Asia, through Chabahar port in Iran, could be linked to Pakistan's road networks, turning both into transit hubs for Eurasian trade. The South Asian Free Trade Area, SAFTA currently limping with limited cooperation, could revive. With open borders, a shared customs union, and lower tariffs, the region could become a $3 trillion integrated economy within a decade. Foreign investors would flock to this newfound peace corridor. Imagine Silicon Valley firms establishing joint R&D hubs in Lahore and Hyderabad, or Dubai's logistics firms building mega dry ports across Punjab. serving both Delhi and Islamabad. Multinationals, now wary of Pakistan's instability and India's regional tensions, would instead see stability, access, and a combined consumer base of nearly 2 billion people. The World Bank once estimated that normal trade between India and Pakistan could touch $37 billion annually, but today, it's under $3 billion. An alliance would unlock the other $34 billion in lost opportunity. And don't underestimate the energy implications. India's growing power needs could be met by importing hydropower from Pakistan's north. In return, Pakistan could benefit from India's renewable energy expertise and grid capacity. In short, instead of being bypassed, both nations would become the bridge between East Asia, Central Asia, and the Middle East, a geo-economic jackpot. But all of this, of course, hinges on one thing. Trust an Indo-Pak alliance wouldn't just change the region, it would send shockwaves across the global order. First, let's talk about China. For decades, Beijing has maintained strong ties with Pakistan, not out of friendship alone, but strategy. Pakistan acts as a counterweight to India, a regional irritant that keeps Delhi cautious. But if Islamabad and Delhi unite, China loses a major card in South Asia. India's influence would surge across the region, giving it the upper hand in the Indo-Pacific strategy alongside the US, Japan, and Australia. Beijing's CPEC, a crown jewel of the Belt and Road Initiative, would risk dilution if Indian trade routes compete or even integrate with it. Second, the United States would be stunned, but not displeased. Washington has long pushed for stability in South Asia, to focus on its real competition with China. An Indo-Pak friendship could allow the US to pivot fully toward countering Beijing, without the South Asian distraction. Moreover, Washington could leverage this alliance to create a new trade and defense axis in Asia that includes India, Pakistan, the UAE, and even Israel. Third, the Muslim world would take note. Pakistan has always presented itself as the defender of Muslim interests, especially in Kashmir. A friendship with India would mean a redefinition of this identity, perhaps evolving toward economic and technological empowerment, rather than perpetual confrontation. It could open doors for joint leadership in the OIC and Global South. But let's be realistic, this won't be easy. Deep-rooted nationalism, decades of mistrust, and the Kashmir conflict are not going away overnight. There are entire political ecosystems in both countries that thrive on conflict. Extremist factions, military hardliners, and partisan media would resist peace, fearing irrelevance in a world without an enemy next door. And yet, every great geopolitical pivot in history was once considered unthinkable. Who would have imagined that France and Germany, once bitter enemies, would become the cornerstone of the European Union, or that the US and Vietnam would become trade partners? The truth is, alliances are not built in moments, but in momentum. Shared interests, rising economic costs of conflict, and a new generation demanding prosperity over nationalism could be the drivers. If India and Pakistan ever break free from their historical chains, they won't just change South Asia, they could reshape the 21st century. This hypothetical may sound like fantasy today, but so did a unified Europe in the 1940s. So did a US-China rapprochement in the Cold War. And yet, history turned. The only question is, will Delhi and Islamabad seize their moment before someone else writes their story for them?